Hi, and welcome back to the Canary Room. On today's show, we'll see the final lines that we'll be running this year. So we'll meet the birds in the green and heavily variegated line and the cinnamon birds. We'll also see the nest pans and how we make up the nests for the British finches. So as always, sit back and enjoy the show. The first pair that we're going to look at are the oldest birds in the shed. It's the heavily variegated buff hen who were bought in this year. She's 3 years old, and a 3-year-old heavily variegated yellow cock. Now you can see they've already built up. She's actually laid 3 eggs. I haven't set them yet, and she was due to lay today, but she hasn't. I've got high hopes for this pair. What I may do is float this first round under another hen, and we'll move eggs around to make sure that those birds that I want to get young from, I've got every chance of doing. And also, because she's 3 years old, I don't really want her to have to rear all of her young over 2 to 3 rounds that I plan to take from her. I want to try and keep this bird as long as possible. There's some real quality that she's produced. The cock that she's with is an absolute belting bird also. He is really short, he's got fantastic feather quality to him. He was very successful on the show bench himself, and he's produced some nice birds for me. I think this is a pair that could go really well, and the birds that get out of here already, and this is what you're thinking about when you're thinking about line breeding and you're thinking about breeding birds, you're not just thinking about this show season, you're not just thinking about this year, you're thinking about the pairings that you need to put together so that you've got pairings for next year and pairings for the year after. And that's one of the most important things in developing a canary stud. Lots of people only think about this year. When it comes to next year, when it comes to the selection process, they're not really sure where they're going to go, what they're going to do, or what pairs will go with any other bird. Okay, so the second birds that we're going to see in the green line are a trio. The middle bird is another black-ringed bird, the buff cock. Green-ringed bird here is the hen, green-yellow hen. And just behind me, tucked in the corner here, is another self-green yellow hen. And this is the half-sister to the blue cock that we saw in a previous episode. The buff cock is a very, very strong buff cock bird. I've run him in a few times. I've left him in, and that's not something I would always do, but I've left him in. He's fed her a few times. I've not seen them mate yet, and I haven't put a pan in for her. I think it's probably just a matter of time that before I do put a pan in for her. I think she's a lot of interest now. I have pulled, you can see there's a slide here. I've pulled it back a little bit at the back, just so that they can make contact with each other. I don't want them to pair bond because I'm running them as a trio, although, as I mentioned in a previous episode, that's my priority of the pairs. You need to focus on the birds that you want to get young out of. And that's why what I won't do is pair any bird with any bird. You know, if a pairing that I want to go together doesn't work in that season, then patience is a real key, and I'll wait for another year. So the final trio that we're going to see in the self-green and heavily variegated line are here. Buff cock, heavily variegated buff cock. He's the nephew to the buff cock that we've just seen and the heavily variegated yellow cock that we saw earlier. Running with 2 hens. In the corner here, you may just be able to make her out, is an unflighted hen. She's started to build up and he's been feeding her. And then here we've got a flighted, heavily variegated yellow hen. She's been a little bit slower to come into condition, but I've noticed earlier today that she was scratching out in the corners, and so she's looking to go to nest. And I put a little bit of material in and she's taken it to the back of her beak now. So we'll run him in a minute and we'll see whether she's ready to mate, or if she's not ready today, it'll be in the next day or so that she'll be ready to go in. What I like to do when I'm running trios of birds is, generally speaking, is keep the cock in the centre cage. I'll run him in with the bird that is more advanced in the morning, so they get the first mating of the day. I'll run him in then to the second hen if she's not quite ready, and more often than not they won't mate. And then on a night when I come back in, I'll run him again with the first hen, who maybe was a little bit behind in condition, to see if he can bring her on a little bit, and then I'll run him again with the hen who's more advanced. And generally what you'll see is the mating takes place almost instantly. It can take place 2 or 3 times, and then I'll run him back in his cage and I'll leave him be. I do like to run pairs together. I like a cock and hen to rear young, but in the system that I operate, which is 12 cocks, 22 hens, I don't always have that luxury. So I'm going to get this boy out now. I'll run him in and see if she's ready. You can see the hen's pulling quite tight. He's beaking, but she's not quite ready. Day or so, and I think that hen will be ready. So we've seen all the dark birds, the greens and the heavily variegateds. As I said in previous episodes, it's a colour I really like. We're now going to move into the cinnamons. Now this is year 3 for the cinnamon line. It's taken a while to develop. This year I've got more cinnamon hens in the shed than I've ever had before. So there's 6 visual cinnamon hens in total. We'll see them now. I've also got a self-green bird who is related to the cinnamons. She's bred out of a cinnamon carrying cock. So we'll see her as well. So the first bird we've got in the middle here is the cock. He's a heavily variegated cinnamon carrier. It's the only cock bird that I've bought in this year. I bought it in from Gerald over in Barnsley. Everything else I've bred in the shed. We've seen his mother. She was the heavily variegated that we saw earlier on in today's show. And we've seen his sister, the self-green bird. So you can see how that line is tied in. You can see the hen here has built up. Now, she's built up, which would indicate that she's ready. She won't take the cock bird. I've ran him in a few times with her and she won't take him. What I will do with this pair is I'll leave him in over the day. So while I'm out and about, I'll leave him in and I'll see if they get on. I think there's a better chance of them having full eggs if he's in the cage than if he's not in the cage. The other bird, which is a really nice bird on the end here, is a cinnamon variegated buff hen. It's a really nice short bird. It's got really good width to her. She's not quite ready yet, so it'll be maybe another 3 or 4 days before she is. She hasn't got a pan in yet, but I will put a pan in the next 3 or 4 days for her. I have put nesting material in there. She's played around with it, but not really picked it up. But this cock's absolutely bouncing. We'll show in a minute the self-green buff hen that he's going with. Now he has mated that bird, and I fully expect as we move him across the bird room that he'll mate with her again. God, almost right on cue. And we'll run him over the self-green buff hen who's bred out of the cinnamon line. So we're going to run him in now. You can see that she's built a nest up, and with any luck he won't be camera shy, but it seems he is. So clearly that didn't quite go to plan. Obviously with the lighting and the cameras, it's not quite the candles and the glass of wine. The birds have mated. You can see she's built a nest. They won't perform on cue, but you can see the way that he's sort of fluffing his feathers out and he's raising the feathers on his head. So he's displaying to her. And I'm sure as we start to film other birds in the room, these will mate in the background.
We may not have caught the pair mating up when the crew were there, but we did catch it later on with Matcam.
So it's coming up to the breeding season, and what I wanted to do is show you how we put together the nest pans. Now you'll see across the selection of the table here that we've got a variety of different nest pans. First we've got jute felts. So we're going to look at the canary pans first and foremost. We've got jute felts that go in the white plastic canary pans. You'll see that actually they don't fit perfectly. So what we have to do is a pair of scissors, we take a little cutout, and we wrap that in now, and you can see it's almost a perfect fit. So to fix it, I used PVA, and the PVA glue is great. It fixes it in, and it comes out really easily at the end of the season. So I've mentioned that we've got a few different pans. I'll show you them now. We've got the plastic pan here, which is great. I hook just screws on the back of the cages, and that hooks on nicely at the back, which works really well. I've got two that go, or three pans that go on the front of the cages. First one are these little orange ones. You can see there's a hook here, that goes through the cage fronts, and that hooks on quite nicely. I've also got here, and I generally use these for the lower cages because they're easier to get to at the front of the cage. We've got a little clay pan, comes in a little bracket. Again, that hangs on the front. And the final one that we've got, and this is a relatively new addition to the Canary room. I really like these. It's a three-piece contraption, which is plastic. So again, the hook's here, hook onto the front of the cage. You've got the nest pan here, and then you've got the back, which slides on. So that's what you see from the outside of the cage. The beauty of this is that you can look through and inspect. You can lift that up, and you can pull this out during the season, and that's really, really important. You can check on the young, make sure they're being fed okay. Again, as with the other dishes, jute pan goes in there like that. You can see, fits perfectly almost. That goes in there. That goes like that, just not there like that. And that sits on the outside of the cage. We offer the Canaries three different types of nesting material. This is jute string. They will pull at this and pluck at this, and this is the main material that we'll use they'll use to build, which is great. It's relatively cheap, comes in big bags. I also give this white Sharpie. White seems to have a strange effect on the birds. They seem to enjoy it in the nest. And I don't know what it is, but it seems to help them with the chicks. I'm sure there's some kind of biological reason behind, whether it's something to do with the eyes or something, but I have no idea, but it seems to work. And the final thing that I give the Canaries is this. This is husky hair. Again, you can get it online, or as I do, I've got a friend who's got a husky, so we go, when the husky's groomed, go around and get a bag full of it. And then what we've also got here is this. This is coconut wire. Now, I don't give this to the Canaries, but I will give it to the British finches. This is a full strip. I will cut it up a little bit for them, and they'll make that. British finches have slightly different nests than the Canaries. They won't nest in open pans, in my experience. Last year, when I cage bred the red poles, I used these cages here. So again, that clicks on to the front, it opens up at the back, and it allows you to pull the nest pan out. You can see it's got a little wicker interior basket in it. What I did with this was last year I wrapped around natural fur, natural tree fur. So it looked really lovely, but after a while, of course, it tied back. So what I've done this year, Christmas, in the Christmas sales, I acquired a wreath. Now you can see I've already cut this, cut a lot of this away, and what I've done this year is made up my own. So I'm going to show you how I do that now. So step by step, really easy to do. We will roughly measure it up. So it's about there. We've got some pliers with wire cutters on. We will trim that like so. So that's coming off there nicely now. Leaves us with this. Nice little bit of greenery. So what we'll do, now is we bend this back here. Again, this fits on the wire of the flight cages, so we'll bend that round like that. And then you can see we've got the base of this. We'll cup it round. It fits like that. And then all we do with the black cable ties, we do the back first. So pop the cable tie through. And this will last the whole season, and it's the beauty of using this type of material to do it. It'll last all season. You can give it a little wipe down. And what we've got, I mean, as well as, you know, obviously it's as much of a natural nesting home as possible, but it's not unattractive to look at as well in the flight cages. So you can see it's fitted there now. All we're going to do is just nip the ends off here and here, and then we've got one in here as well that we've twisted up. So we'll just nip that off. Take a bit of the green there as well. And that's done. So we're going to bring it up a little bit, so it's got the height to it, and then we're going to, if we can just see that there, we're just going to wrap it round the top so that it's a little bit more enclosed. Not too enclosed so we can't see, because we don't like disturbing the British finches too much, but because they're captive bred, they've got to be closed rung, so you need to see when they're young in the nest, you need to see when things are being laid. And then what we will do, just to give them a little bit of a kickstart, is we'll wrap some of the coconut fibre in there. We'll pop a little bit of Sharpie in as well. We'll just push that down and we'll leave that and we'll pop it in. That's how we've made the nests. I'm going to go back into the canary room now. We'll have a look at some of the birds. So the second trio that we've got in the cinnamon line is a self-green cinnamon carrion buffcock. We'll see his father in a minute. A self-cinnamon yellow hen, an unflighted bird. It's a lovely little bird, this. And then in the cage here behind me, we'll see in a minute, is another little self-cinnamon yellow hen. Really nice little cinnamon hen, this. It's related to the carrier cock, which is good. The cinnamon yellow hens at the moment are a little bit down on condition. You'll see that on each of the cages I've got these little finger drawers full of some condition mix, and this has got a special tonic on it, which is soaked in over a period of 24 hours, just to try and raise them up a bit. Because they've been moved around a fair bit in the last 3 or 4 weeks, that will knock the birds back. I'm pretty sure that they'll be okay for the season. It hasn't gone into a soft molt as yet, which is good. Hopefully it doesn't. But it's a nice bird, it's a nice little short bird. With the pairings of the cinnamon, because this is a carrier cock and it's a cinnamon hen, what that means is that all of the young that come out will be visually cinnamon or carrier cock birds. Got high hopes for these pairs in this trio, and we'll see how they get on as we go through the season. As I say, hopefully they'll be coming into condition. The hen in the cage behind me is a little bit more advanced than this hen here, but both of them aren't quite where I'd like them to be just yet. So the final trio that we've got for the cinnamon line is another carrier cock. It's a heavily variegated carrier cock. It's the father of the self-green buff carrier cock we've just seen. We've got a lovely little variegated cinnamon yellow hen. We've met her in an earlier episode. She's the sister of Gerald's North of England winner from last year. And then we've got a flighted self-cinnamon hen in the cage behind me. If you remember in a previous episode, the variegated cinnamon hen was a little bit down. She's picked up quite nicely. Again, I've been feeding them with the conditioning mix with the special tonic in it. and she's come well. She's gone into a soft moult. I'm hopeful that we'll get a round out of her at least for the season. She is my priority pair of these two here. The cock's absolutely bouncing. In fact, I've run this cock over a clear yellow hen who was very early to go to nest. She laid 1 egg in the flight cages. I checked the eggs earlier today. She's got 4 eggs. 4 of them are full. Now, it's not a pair I'd normally run together, a carrier cock over a normal hen. And the reason I wouldn't run that pair together is because there's no way of telling whether the cocks from that pairing will be cinnamon carriers or not. Some will, some won't. It's a nice hen, the hen that I've run. It's a spare hen in the shed. I always like to keep a few spares. Next episode we'll look at the Norwich. They're not fantastic at rearing their own young, so I generally will float their eggs under 5s. But as I say, this bird's already filled 4 eggs, so I know he's fertile. I bred some nice birds off him last year. He bred me a show winner last year. He's the anchor bird in the cinnamon line. He's also related to the green birds. And again, I've talked about it throughout the episode, and I've talked about it over the last 2 episodes really, about the importance of family lines and how you develop a family line. And really the key to breeding, successful breeding and doing well on the show bench, is having a good strong line of birds. That's all we've got time for today. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Canary Room, to like our Facebook page, and to check out our YouTube channel for hints and tips. Don't forget to get in touch with us too at The Canary Room and let us know how you're getting on. On the next episode, we'll see the Norwich, we'll see how the Fifes, who we've seen today, are getting on. Hopefully there'll be plenty of eggs and some chicks too. Until then, take care, goodbye. We've got some pliers with wire cutters on. We will trim that like so. Okay. I'm getting covered in sawdust and seed. Oh, I looked at you. Line! So that's all we've got time for today. Just spat everywhere. Sorry. And again.